In this lecture, we'll dive into few-shot prompt engineering, a technique that builds upon the zero-shot prompting that we discussed earlier. While they share similarities, few-shot prompts offer unique advantages that make them valuable in certain situations. Few-shot prompting involves guiding a model towards more specific responses by providing a small number of examples. Even though ChatGPT is trained on a vast dataset, sometimes we desire a more precise answer. Luckily, we can accomplish this right within the chat interface without needing to write code. By supplying a few prompts for the model to learn from, we help it grasp our intended output. This differs from standard prompts, where we simply ask a question and expect an accurate or sort of accurate response. Few-shot prompting is particularly useful when tackling specialized or domain-specific topics. Throughout this lecture, you're going to witness how few-shot prompting can boost the coherence and consistency of the output. So to start, you'll want to make sure you're on the same ChatGPT screen as before. I'm going to input a specific few-shot prompt and then break it down for you, explaining each part in detail. Then after that, we'll iterate on the prompt and I'll further dissect it, showing the power of few-shot prompt engineering. Okay, let's see how a few-shot prompt works in action with ChatGPT. So let's start with this prompt. Assign a sentiment to texts with no sentiment in between brackets. I will label the first three. Output each string of text. Do not provide an explanation. And what I'm going to do below that is paste in the sentiment texts. Now in this prompt, we're giving ChatGPT a little nudge by providing examples of sentiment labeling. We've got the first three covered with positive, negative, and neutral sentiments. Then we ask our ChatGPT friend to take care of the remaining two examples without any extra explanations. This way, we're using a few-shot approach to help the model understand what we're after. So let's see if ChatGPT can crack the code and accurately assign sentiments to the last two examples based on the context that we provided. Now, I really hope that you don't think this is the worst course ever. But if you do, don't worry, I still have time to win you over since we've got some awesome content coming up. But let's get back to the prompt I entered into ChatGPT and break down the reasoning behind it. So imagine you've got customer reviews that you want to label, maybe to get a sense of the overall sentiment. With just a little help, ChatGPT is able to quickly return accurate sentiment labels for us. Remember, we're working with a pre-trained model here, but since our data might be unique, we give it the answers to the first few examples, then we let it learn from those examples and apply that knowledge to the rest. So this is how a few-shot prompt works. We provide a bit of guidance, and then the model connects the dots with its own data to give us the output we want. You'll notice how I started the prompt with the instruction first. That's super important. And then I added the extra information that was needed while keeping it really specific. But let's now dive deeper into the prompt I entered into ChatGPT. I want to break it down into the four components of a prompt for you to help you grasp each part better. So to start, we have the task. And the task is pretty simple. It's the first sentence. And that is to assign a sentiment to text with no sentiment in between brackets. So we're asking ChatGPT to do a very specific task here. And to be even more specific, we tell it to look for missing sentiment in between brackets. The second component, input, is the data that we provided, so the 5 reviews. And of those 5 reviews, 3 were labelled with a sentiment. This guidance helps the model know what kind of sentiment to apply. Thirdly, which is the next component, that's output. And our output are the final two sentences. Output each string of text, do not provide an explanation. So we want ChatGPT to assign sentiment labels to the unlabeled texts and then output each text with its own sentiment label. We also explicitly state that we don't want any additional explanations as to why it chose a particular sentiment. And then we have the final component, which is context. And those are the first 3 reviews with the sentiment labels assigned to them. And that serves as context for ChatGPT to learn from for the other texts. Now this is of course a relatively simple few-shot prompt. The model might have been able to assign labels without our context. However, providing context helps make the output more accurate, and it's especially crucial when working with more unique and specialized data. Okay, let's now go back to the chat box, and what I want to do is enter another prompt, and this is going to do a few things such as assign a sentiment reliability score, convert it to a JSON file, and so on. But as I write it out, I will explain it. So first, let's start with the task for this prompt that we're creating, and that is assign a sentiment reliability score to each string of text. So as you can see, we're explicitly stating our instructions first. They're not hidden within the prompt or placed after contextual information. We're asking ChatGPT to assign a reliability score to the output it provided earlier. This extra step can help us better understand the reliability of the assigned sentiments. Now let's continue defining and specifying the task in our prompt. So I'm going to enter the following, convert the output into a JSON file. So once ChatGPT has determined the reliability score, we want it to output the results as a JSON file. Again, it's another clear instruction for the model. Next, we're going to enter the input, which is the second element of a prompt. And in this case, the inputs are the strings of text from the previous output, the reviews with their index and number sentiment. ChatGPT remembers the context within the current chat. If we tried this in a new chat, it wouldn't know the previous context and might make something up or say it doesn't understand. As I've mentioned before, each chat acts like a brain, so within each chat, the model knows the previous interactions, which becomes a powerful tool when dealing with complex tasks and discussions. So that allows us to move on to output. And in this prompt, we want a JSON file with sentiment reliability assigned to each string. We can go further and specify the output by adding the following: key 1 for index, key 2 for text, key 3 for sentiment, key 4 for score. We're being really explicit here about the keys we want to represent our data. And by being clear, we can increase the chances of getting the desired output from the model. Remember, the goal of prompt engineering is to get clearer responses. And that's based on chances, and to increase our chances of getting that, we need to write in a very clear way. Now, for the final part of our output, we want the JSON file without any explanations. So we'll add the following: output the JSON file inside a code block with no explanations. ChatGPT can sometimes provide unwanted explanations, but by specifying our requirements, we increase the chances of getting a concise output. And that's what it's about with prompts, increasing your chances of getting what you want, and that involves being extremely clear. And the final component of prompts, which is context. For this prompt, there is no additional context that is required, as compared to the previous prompts that we entered, where some was required and we entered it. So once you hit submit with the prompt, you'll see that you get an accurate response just as we wanted. It's outputted inside of a JSON file without any additional explanations. Now, you could even ask ChatGPT to format it as a CSV file or any other format you need. These clever tricks can really help you save a ton of time, and the power of prompt engineering becomes even more apparent when you start combining such techniques. I hope you had a great time learning about few-shot prompt engineering in this lecture. I invite you to join me in the next lecture where we'll dive into a mini project together, and then following that, we'll move on to another style of prompting.